I want to take a little bit of time and give you some of the basics of the Blessing of the Energy Centers meditation. The Blessing of the Energy Centers meditation has become our most popular meditation amongst our advanced community. And I want you to know that those of you that have been doing my work, where I've asked people to rest their attention in different parts of their body and the space around their body, has been training for this particular meditation. Now, when you rest your attention in a different part of your body, you're practicing what's called a convergent focus. You're narrowing your focus on something material, on matter, on your body, on the particle in quantum physics. That's only one type of focus, and we've been trained our entire life to focus on matter, to focus on objects, on people, as materialists in our outer world. And it's been reinforced by our parents, watch the step, tie your shoe, watch the car. And that kind of emergency focus when we're threatened in some way or we have to pay attention causes us to become very narrow in our focus. And that's become the habit of how we've pretty much focused. And the more stressed out we are, the more we're in survival, the more we're running the hormones of stress, the more we focus on matter. So then there's another type of focus called a divergent focus. And that's also been called the open focus, and Buddhists have been practicing this meditation for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Now, when you open your focus and you sense space, when you sense energy, when you sense nothing, when you open your focus and you tune in to the field, the act of opening your focus in that direction causes very substantial changes to take place in your brain. That's when you're focusing on the wave in quantum physics. That's when you're focusing on energy. And if you study quantum physics at all, you'll realize that matter is a very small percentage of reality, and that the wave function, energy, is a huge part of reality. Matter is 0.0000001% of reality, and energy is 99.999999% of reality. So most of the world that we perceive in terms of matter is a small spectrum of what really exists. So the practice of convergent and divergent focus has been the preparation for this meditation. And many people, in learning this, overanalyzed it, and all I want them to do is to become aware of their nose in space, the center of their throat in space, the center of their chest in space, and then I want them to sense the space around their body. The act of doing that, then, creates neurological networks in their brains, so that when we teach the blessing of the energy centers, they already know how to do this. Each one of these energy centers in your body is under the control of the autonomic nervous system. Now, your autonomic nervous system is that automatic nervous system that keeps your heart beating and digesting your food and controlling your blood sugar levels and hormone levels and body temperature, your appetite. It's that subconscious part of the brain that's giving life to us, and it's happening behind the scenes of our conscious awareness. Now, think about your brain waves. When you're listening to me talk right now and you have to pay attention to everything that I'm saying, and if you're hungry or you're tired or you have pain in your back or the temperature's too hot in the room, your thinking brain is busy creating coherence and meaning between what's going on in your outer world and what's going on in your inner world. And because that's a lot of sensory information and your brain's got to create some order there, when you were to measure a person's brain waves when they're doing that, their brain waves are kind of fast. They're what's called beta brainwave patterns. When you begin to relax and you begin to get calm and you begin to surrender a little bit and you slow your breathing down, the calm creative state that's created when you do this switches your brain waves from beta brain waves to alpha brainwave patterns. Now, as you slow your brain waves from beta to alpha, you begin to enter the autonomic nervous system. You begin to go from your conscious mind into the subconscious recesses of the brain. And now you're beginning to access the operating system to begin to influence your autonomic nervous system. Now, your autonomic nervous system knows how to heal way better than you and I can ever heal. It just needs the proper orders and instructions. So when you begin to sense nothing, when you begin to sense space, when you begin to open your focus, the act of sensing and feeling causes you to stop thinking and analyzing. And that's what begins to change your brain waves from beta brain waves to alpha brain waves. And some people even move into what's called theta brain waves. Now, in theta brain waves, their body is beginning to fall asleep and their mind is awake. Now, if the body has been conditioned to be the mind 95% of the time and the body is asleep, it's no longer the mind. Now, this is when we can make instantaneous changes in the brain and body. So I also knew then if people didn't know how to control their brain waves and regulate their brain waves, and they were trying to influence their autonomic nervous system in beta brain waves, they'd be outside the operating system and would produce very little results. So all the training in convergent and divergent focus was preparation for this meditation. Now, each one of these energy centers are different centers in the body. They have their own energy. They have their own frequency, which means each one has a different frequency and a different energy. Frequency and energy carries information, so each center emits its own information, its own consciousness, its own intent. That energy carries a message. It has their own glands, their own hormones, their own chemicals, and their own individual little mini brains. In fact, inferior mesenteric plexus is the bottom one, superior mesenteric plexus, solar plexus or celiac plexus, heart plexus, thyroid plexus, pineal gland, pituitary gland, clusters of neurons. And whenever you have a group of neurons working together or firing together, that's called mind. Mind is the brain in action. So then when energy moves to each one of these centers, the moment energy activates each one of these little brains, each one of those centers has their own individual mind. A sexual fantasy, as an example, begins to send energy down into that center. That mind becomes activated. We emit our own energy, our own frequency. That frequency is carrying an intent or message. Hormones and glands are changing. That center becomes aroused and it's activated, and energy is coming out of that center. If we begin to trust our gut and we begin to have energy move into that center, when we trust our gut, we're trusting our intuition and we're navigating in our life in that way. When we activate energy in our third center, we have to use our will and we have to empower our dreams and overcome the conditions in our environment. And when we open our heart and we feel love and nurturing and compassion and kindness and presence, and we feel more whole, and this center becomes activated and we trust more. It has its own energy. It's emitting its own frequency. It's carrying its own message. Different hormones and glands are being activated out of that center. And when this center becomes activated, of course, the same thing happens. So an enormous amount of energy sits in the first center. Think about how much energy it takes to create a child. And that in the male and the female, the union of that connection and the sperm and the egg come together, there's energy that's being combined along with genetic combinations and cross-linking and a new life. But we've been conditioned into thinking that the only way to take care of this energy or use this energy is to release it. But we can take that creative energy and move it up. And when we move that energy to the second center, and we feel safe in our environment. We have social structures, we have community, we have culture, we have family, we have food, we have shelter, and we feel safe in our environment. Energy naturally moves into this second center. When the conditions in our environment become unsafe, or we feel threatened, or we're facing adversity or challenges in our life, we have to transmute that energy into our third center, and we have to use our will and our power. We have to begin to overcome our environment, and that takes an act of moving energy into this third center. Now, if we overcome the conditions in our environment and we're successful, energy naturally moves into our fourth center, and we feel more whole, we feel more love, we feel more joyful, and this center is activated. And when energy makes it here, we have to express what our truth is. We have to express our love. We have to express what we've learned. And energy moves to this center. And when we express it clearly and articulately, the energy naturally moves into the sixth center. And all of a sudden, the sixth center begins to open up dormant areas of the brain, and we begin to perceive a broader spectrum of reality. And if the sixth center sends energy to the seventh center, we feel more harmony within ourselves and all around us. And of course, there's an energy center above the head, and if energy makes it all the way up to the top of the head, now we are worthy to receive, and we begin to download information from the cosmos into our nervous system, and it's not coming from our memory bank, it's coming from the field. And that's the natural flow of energy as it moves up. It makes sense then that when people have had betrayals or traumas or sexual molestations or have had serious conditions in their life, how energy can stay stuck in different energy centers and it causes them to close down. We protect those centers over time. So then when energy stays stuck in the second center, as an example, a person would be suffering, would feel guilty, may feel shame, may feel victimized. If energy is stuck in the third center, the person may feel controlling or overly important or addicted to fear or power or control. You can see then that some people have some blocks in their energy centers. So then these energy centers, as I said, are under the control of the autonomic nervous system. Now, autonomic means automatic. It means it's that regulating system that's trying to create balance and homeostasis in our body. So when we're under the gun of the fight or flight nervous system, which is 70% of the time for most people, and they're reacting to conditions in their lives, the moment we turn on that primitive nervous system and we begin to arouse the brain and body, the moment we're feeling stress, we're usually feeling stress because we can't predict an outcome, we're losing control in some level, or we have the perception that things are going to get worse in our life. When we begin to run those chemicals and we move into survival, and living in stress is living in survival, we try to control and predict and hold on and manipulate outcomes in our life. So once the brain gets aroused, and we're trying to keep everything together in our life, we start shifting our attention very quickly from one person to one problem to one thing to one place to another person to another problem to another thing. And every person, problem, or thing or object has a neurological network in our brain. So as we shift our attention very quickly, we activate these different circuits. And if we do that when the brain is aroused and we're activating these different circuits and we do it over and over again, the brain begins to become segregated. It becomes compartmentalized. And now the brain is like a house divided against itself. If you were to measure the person's brainwave patterns when they're under the gun of their fight or flight nervous system, they're no longer in normal resting beta brainwaves. Now they're in high beta brainwaves. Now the brain is aroused because there's an emergency, there's a danger. But what if it isn't a saber-toothed tiger? What if it's the coworker sitting in the cubicle next to you? It's the act of thinking about those things and the act of being in the same conditions in your environment that begins to cause the brain to fire very incoherently. So when you measure the brain waves when a person is in that state, not only are they in high beta brain waves, but the incoherent firing of those different neurological networks, like a lightning storm, causes the brain to begin to fire very incoherently. Now, when the brain is incoherent, you're incoherent. And when the brain isn't working right, you're not working right. And it's that incoherent signal that travels down the central nervous system that begins to cause these different energy centers under the control of the autonomic nervous system, these small little brains that begin to function very incoherently, which means it sends an incoherent message to the cells and tissues and organs in that area of the body. So when you're under the gun of the fight or flight nervous system and the brain is aroused, you're also drawing from this invisible field of energy around your body, and you're turning it into chemistry. And if you keep doing it over and over again, the field around your body begins to shrink. Now you're becoming more matter and less energy, more particle and less wave. The act of doing that over time then causes us to feel separate from possibility. Why? The very nature of the stress hormones causes you to either run, fight, or hide. That's the mechanism. So people spending 70% of the time trying to control and predict their life, try to manipulate outcomes, to fight for what they want, it's because they're believing that they're matter, trying to change matter because they feel separate from the field. So then if you keep tapping from this field, and the first three centers are energy consumers: orgasm, digestion, fight or flight, takes an enormous amount of energy from the field around our body, that invisible field of light and information, and turns it into chemistry, tapping our body's vital resources. Now, none of those things are bad, but when we overutilize them, of course, the body doesn't have time to regenerate. So then, if the field around your body, which is energy and light, or energy and information, is shrinking, then you have no energy to activate any one of these centers, and you have no field around your body. So it makes sense then, if there's no energy available and energy activates these centers, then all of a sudden these centers begin to fire very incoherently, just like this brain. So our research shows then, when a person begins to sense energy and space, when they begin to open their focus and they begin to become aware of that space, their attention is going on that field, their energy begins to follow. And if they're not analyzing and thinking and they're just sensing, not only do their brain waves change from beta to alpha to theta, but all of a sudden now, when they're sensing and they're no longer thinking, as their brain waves slow down, consciousness falls right out of the thinking brain, right into the autonomic nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system begins to step in at the same time, and its job is to create coherence and balance. And all of a sudden, when you get beyond yourself and you change your brain waves and connect to that autonomic nervous system, it begins to cause different compartments of the brain that were once subdivided because of the hormones of stress to begin to synchronize. Now, what syncs in the brain links in the brain. And all of a sudden, you'll see different compartments of the brain that were no longer firing coherently begin to unify, to begin to function more holistically. And the front of the brain starts communicating with the back of the brain, the right side with the left side, and you start seeing the brain becoming more integrated. And it becomes more orderly and it becomes more whole. You feel more whole. You feel more connected. You start trusting more. You feel more poised and spontaneous. So then, as you open your focus and you create coherence in this brain, what if you were to rest your attention in each one of these centers? And as you rest your attention in each one of these centers and the space around them, and if you could feel from those centers the energy around with those individual little brains, you could begin to create coherence in each one of these individual brains, just like you do with this brain. So as you rest your attention in the space your perineum occupies in space, that area that is your pelvic floor, where your genitals are, that area there, there's a lot of energy in that center. As you tune in to the frequency around it, you allow this center to draw from a new field of coherent light and information. And we don't spend a lot of time doing it because our students know how to do it. And after 2 or 3 minutes or so, they move their attention to the second center, to the space behind their navel and slightly below it. And as they rest their attention in that space, because they've practiced it, they tune into the energy of that center, that different frequency, different energy, different consciousness. And if they do that properly, and they tune into it, they sense it, they pay attention to it, they experience it, moment after moment after moment, and stay present with it, the act of tuning in allows this center to draw from a new field of energy and information and creates more coherence in that brain, which sends a coherent message to the cells and tissues and organs in that part of the body. And then when you rest your attention in the pit of your gut, right in the center here, your third center, you're putting your attention there, you're putting your energy there. You're localizing your attention, that's your target. And as you tune into the energy around this center, you can't do it with your senses, you got to do it with your awareness. As you tune into that energy and you stay present with it and you experience it and you open up to it and receive, this center will draw from a new field of coherent energy and information, and it'll send a very coherent message to the cells and tissues and organs in that part of the body. What's that? The stomach, the liver, the spleen, the pancreas, the upper intestine. All of a sudden, this center is getting more coherent. And then if you were to rest your attention in the center of your chest, acknowledging this center and becoming aware of the energy around this center in that field. And as you tune in to that frequency and you stay present with it and you feel it and you sense it and you pay attention to it moment after moment, if you do that properly now, this center draws from a different field of coherent light and information and sends a very coherent message to the heart and lungs. And of course, the fifth center in the center of the throat, same procedure. The sixth center between the back of your throat and the back of your head, tuning into that center, become aware of the energy around it. The seventh center in the center of your head, if you put your attention there and the space around it, you tune into a different frequency. And as we climb Jacob's ladder, we'll go to the space 16 inches or 40 centimeters above your head. The Egyptians called it the Ka. Now, that center here is a real center, and when you become aware of it, I'm going to ask you then to become aware that you're aware as a thought up here in that space. You should be able to do that in that infinite black space. And then if I ask you to bless the center in a state of gratitude, why gratitude? Well, you normally give thanks when you receive something. So as you begin to give thanks and tune into gratitude, you're in a state of receivership. And it allows you to draw energy from the field all the way down into your brain and body. And so then as you tune into that center, for a few minutes, you are opening up the door to the cosmos. And then what if I ask you to become aware of the space around your body? This egg, this teardrop of energy. This here is not you. This is you. And if where you place your attention is where you place your energy, as you sense this space around your body in space, the more you tune into it, the more you pay attention to it, the more you experience it, the more you stay present with it, and the more you put your attention on it, what you put your attention on expands, because where you put your attention is where you put your energy. Now you're building your own field of coherent light and information. What's the relevance of that? Well, if you're building a field of orderly energy, now the atoms and the molecules and the chemicals and the cells and the tissues and the organs and the systems of your body are drawing from a new field of coherent light and information. And the latest research in information biology tells us that we are not just a product of chemical reactions and charges in our cells, that cells emit light and information. And the more coherent the light and information that's resonating around the cell, the better the communication between cells and the better communication within the cells. And the communication that takes place within the cell and between cells is faster than the speed of light. So it's a quantum phenomenon. And when cells don't have energy and light and information surrounding it, or the energy that they're emitting is incoherent, then the cells are in dis-ease. So then as you build a coherent field of light and information, that energy is giving very, very orderly instructions and organizing everything down from an atomic level all the way through the molecules, the chemicals, the cells, the tissues and organs and systems of your body. So when you begin to draw from this field and turn it into chemistry and the field around your body shrinks, now you're more matter and less energy. You don't have any energy to heal. And so now you're left to the second law of thermodynamics, which is things tend to break down in the universe, that you move towards what's called entropy, disorder. Well, when you build your own field of coherent light and information, you'll begin to experience what's called syntropy or reverse entropy. Now you're more energy than matter, and now you're going against that law of thermodynamics because you feel connected to something greater. You're connected to that unified field. So this has become a very popular meditation amongst our community. We only spend 3 or 4 minutes on each energy centers. We call it climbing Jacob's ladder. As we do this properly and we create more coherence in each one of these centers, we have seen people heal themselves of impotence, of bladder infections, of bladder cancer, of prostate conditions, prostate cancer, prostatic hypertrophy, rectal cancer, diverticulitis, colon cancer, constipation, acid reflux, high liver enzymes, high pancreatic enzymes, food allergies, heart palpitations, arrhythmias, asthmas, high thyroid enzymes, low thyroid enzymes, thyroid tumors, brain tumors, just by resting their attention in each one of these centers, creating more homeostasis and balance in the process. So the blessing of the energy centers, people have had profound experiences. There are several levels to it. I wanted to explain the basics to you before you started, because once you understand the foundations and the basics, you could always progress. And to this day, I still do the basic level blessing of the energy centers when I work with my body back towards balance. So give it a try. I hope you enjoy it.